Hey there, welcome back to Spirit of a Handyman. Today I want to talk to you about some considerations for setting your post bases. These are some things that I've learned over the years of building some decks and some things that would have been helpful to think through before I was actually building. So the first thing is you want to consider the grade of the soil that you're building on. So in the case of a newer development, especially if you've got a big hillside behind you, then I would anticipate that a lot of the dirt you're dealing with is going to be fill dirt, which means there's going to be a lot of concrete and stones and things that are going to just be a pain to dig out, especially if you're having to go 30 to 40 inches down below grade. That's just going to be a pain, and you just want to know that ahead of time. Just like a simple consideration of what kind of soil do you think you're going to run into. Is it fill or is it not? Another consideration is if your piers are going to be elevated above the ground. If so, then you want to put those in sonar tube, which is like a cardboard paper sleeve. You pour your concrete in, it gives it enough time to set. You can, of course, always peel that away afterwards. It's biodegradable over time. But that's really designed for when your deck piers are going to be sticking up out of the ground and you need elevation. Which brings me to point number 3. Do you keep your concrete down inside the ground? If so, I think it looks better to not have to deal with having these piers stick up out of the ground. But conversely, if your post is actually in the soil, especially if it's in the soil, in any kind of soil that's going to hold moisture, that wood is eventually going to just wick water up into it, and the place that's going to start rotting is down at the base, and that's no bueno. The fourth consideration is, what are you going to do with the old piers? Let's say you're doing a deck remodel, and that old remodel you want to, are you going to leave the existing piers in the ground where they are? Do you need to budget the time and effort to pull those up? And then where are you going to put them? They're probably going to weigh 100 to 150 pounds. So what are you going to do with all that concrete after you get it up out of the ground? Most of the time, because what you're building on is if you're remodeling a deck, you're going over top of the existing footprint, I would personally recommend just leaving them there in the ground. They're already there. The ground has absorbed it as its own. I would just get rid of the old posts and then build new. Which leads me to point number 5. Some people will reuse the existing post bases, and I think that's questionable. I would rather know for certain that the size post that I'm going to put on that pier is going to be big enough. It's going to support it. I want to make sure that's the case. And if you're going on the work of what somebody else did, you just can't guarantee that. Of course, you could excavate all around it, and now you know, okay, it is the right size. But now you have to backfill around it, and so I would much rather say, just go ahead and plan on excavating new holes, drop concrete in there, and that way you know you've got the right depth, the right width, all that. I have a whole nother video on frost heave, but that's kind of 0.5.5, or we'll call it 0.6, which is, do you want to do a sonar tube which will prevent or prohibit or deter frost heave, or are you just gonna dig a hole as straight as you can, ideally, if anything, angled kind of like a where it flares the lower it goes, and just dig it by hand and then dump the concrete in. The last consideration would be, what kind of anchoring system are you going to use for your post base? So some people will drop the little J hooks in the concrete while it's wet, which is great. I really love that system. The downside is you have to know exactly where it's going to be so that you can mount your plate on there. Basically, this is to keep the deck from pushing up if hurricane-like winds come by. So you want to make sure that your post is anchored to the concrete so that it's not going anywhere. Basically, the two ways to do that are the J-hook, like I mentioned, and then also you could let your pier cure for about a week, and then drill into it and use some sort of a tapcon wedge concrete anchor system. That's what I tend to do because it allows for a little bit of grace, an inch or 2 inches, if I was off with my initial measurement of digging a hole, or if I started digging a hole but I dug it a little funny on one side or the other. So I recommend doing it, giving it about a week, and then using like a tapcon system. But if you can get away with the J anchors, you can just put that deck up, in the same week. It'd be awesome. So there you go. Some considerations when you are building a deck or perhaps rebuilding a deck. Things that I hope are helpful, just little tips and tricks that are worth considering before you begin. Comment down below if there are any things that you have thought of, that you have found that are helpful. And as a DIY community, let's identify those together and build better things. Click that subscribe button and stay tuned for more updates from Spirit of a Handyman.
He's got the spirit of a handyman. A handyman.